Welcome back, everyone, to BBB Sharing. I'm Evie, Director of Ignite, sparked by BBB. And with me today, I have two very special guests. I have Amy and Scott Ellis from Scott Ellis Painting.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having us.
Of
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for coming. I know it's been a busy start to the year. January was kind of crazy for everybody. February seems to have mellowed down a little bit more. But I want to go ahead, and you guys are an accredited business. I want everybody to know about what you guys do.
Great. Well, Scott Ellis Painting obviously is a painting business. I think one of the things that we try to tell people right away is that we have kind of a narrow focus of residential repainting. So there's a lot of different kinds of painting that gets done out there. You have your commercial and industrial. You have car painting, which we always try to avoid, by the way. And then you have new construction and then down to what we do, which is repainting things. And primarily it's residential, but we also will do small office space and that type of thing. That's a good fit for us because we've been doing this now for close to 17 years, something like that. And, as we've gone through it, whenever you do something like that, you kind of find the things that you like to do and maybe the stuff that's not so much fun. So we found that we really liked serving customers, and those customers that appreciate that tend to be the ones where you're actually in their personal living space. So whenever we arrive, we're kind of got that sort of fiber to what we're presenting, and they appreciate that. So we're concerned about a whole plethora of personal things, and primarily when we first are given the opportunity to say do an estimate for somebody, we'll just try to listen to what it is that's important to them. And you have to have a listening ear for that, because sometimes I remember in one particular case I was doing an estimate, and it was for an exterior, and the guy was walking me around the house. And, of course, you're looking at siding and trim and windows and doors and all that kind of stuff. But he ends up pointing at the ground. There's a plant that got put in the front yard, and it was planted as a memorial to her dog that had passed away. And he said, this plant is really important to my wife. And so out comes my pen, and I'm writing that down, and I'm making sure that note gets in my estimate. And so that, and whatever goes into my estimate, by the way, is also transferred then over to the work order for the painters. So the production manager will read that and make sure everybody knows, and I'll get real descriptive about it, or the estimator, whoever's doing it, we want to put plastic around that, or maybe even put something structural around it to make sure, because when you're out there and you're actually physically painting, a lot of times, your eyes are up, you're looking at where you're trying to put your ladder, and you're really not paying attention to what your feet are doing. So it's just little details like that. Another example, is sometimes you'll go into a home, and people have different levels of stuff in their home, and different levels of how they take care of it, and different levels of, their kind of decorating and that kind of thing. And I remember one particular house where this person had a lot of antiques, but they weren't just an antique collector. These were heirlooms of their family. Oh. And, she started telling me things like, okay, well, if you move this leg's a little loose, and, all this kind of stuff. And of course, I'm like, okay, again, the pen comes out and we start trying to write stuff down like that.
For me, that's a recipe for disaster.
And no pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I could sign up for that project. I'd probably be, I'd say, maybe we should just get somebody else to wrap it all up first in bubble wrap before we...
Yeah, sometimes you think that, but most of the time what ends up happening is it's real competitive out there. Yeah. And so the next guy will come in who maybe doesn't care about all that stuff, but he still sells it, So you typically, whatever it is we do, just try to do what we need to do to take care of it. And, we'll come in, we carry furniture sliders. There's different ones for carpet than there are for hardwoods, and just things like that where you get things set up right. And the production manager, who right now is me, I'll go in and just make sure as the crew begins to unload and unpack and bring in drop cloths and bring in plastic and start taping stuff up, that I'm watching for those little areas, where we have, a pain point for the customer. And then, if the customer is there, a lot of times I'll get them and I'll bring them, to that and just say, is this okay? Are you happy with this? And that little bit of communication a lot of times it goes a lot further than, just putting the paint on the wall. And so our business is just a lot more than the actual painting. Painting is the key piece, but you'd be surprised at how many people tell us, oh, I had another painter and they did da-da-da-da-da. And, it just left. And I'm looking at the paint job they did, and it's not bad. But the memory that the customer had of their work caused them to not call that company back again, which is why we're getting the opportunity. And so how a paint job gets done is just as important as, getting the paint job done. So we're always shooting for a good end game. I always tell the customer, especially, you have those customers that maybe you detect they're going to be a little bit tougher to work with, and that's fine. It's their home, right? Yeah. So I have a home too, so I can understand you have strangers in your home. But what I'll do sometimes is I'll if they're just kind of blowing through, 'cause sometimes a customer wanting an estimate, they're just like, send it to me in the mail, or email it to me or something like that. And that's not how we really want to do it, because what I'll tell them is, look, there's a bullseye on your job that we really want to hit. And what I'm trying to do right now in this presentation and everything is just to see if I can get a good image of what the goal is. Obviously, it's to get colored paint on the wall, but there's so much more than that. And usually by this point in the conversation, I can bring up the things they've already mentioned that are of concern to them. And so since I'm sensing that they might be a little bit concerned about having painters in their house, I just try to repeat back everything that they've said and how we would handle it. And does that sound good to you, or that kind of thing? And then again, if we do get the opportunity and are blessed with the opportunity to, work with that person, then, we'll, as we're setting up, bring them in and ask, is this okay? Are you happy with this? And then we just typically try to check in, at the end of every day, that kind of thing. I'm always trying to pull a dipstick. How's the customer feeling, about getting this done? And so far that seems to work pretty good. I'm happy if the customer's happy, is kind of the way that I do that.
I think that's what sets, and I always say this every time I have accredited businesses come in here and do this podcast with us, it's what sets you guys aside from the competition. It's that caring, it's that honesty, that transparency and integrity, and participating in trust in the marketplace. I don't think people really understand that it's not so much the price tag you should be looking at the project. It should be more so about the integrity of the company.
Right, yeah. And I'm usually pretty straightforward with them too. In the beginning, as I'll say, what I want from this is a 5-star review.
Yeah.
And I'll just sort of start planting that seed. So if I'm getting a look back that doesn't look very 5-star, I'm trying to find out early, how can we get this back over on track so we could get there. And sometimes I'll be, even as forward as saying, do you feel that we have earned or are earning a 5-star review?
Oh, that's a good way of wording it.
Yeah, if I can't, really ascertain from what they're saying elsewhere, because some people are telling you they're happy and they're not, and you've got to figure those out too. And Amy helps us a lot too with another aspect of this, which is a lot of times you have a customer that is, they know they want to paint, they want something that makes them feel good, they want something they can show to their friends and family that just makes things feel like, I don't know, that it's rich or that it's, trendy or whatever. And Amy's the one that kind of can step in and talk about color, because that is not my strength. I
was
can
gonna
put
ask.
it on. I can tell you how to prepare it so that it won't come back off and all that kind of stuff. But Amy is the one that really gets into the color side of it.
I was going to ask about the color because I know color psychology is a big deal. I'll never forget when my parents were deciding to paint the living room, my mother kept insisting on a burgundy red. And I said, don't do it. And she was like, why? It's such a beautiful color. And I said, it is a beautiful color, but red generally puts you in a very anxious mood and makes you hungry a lot.
Right.
And she didn't believe me. So for 2 years, we had red in the living room. And she said, why do I feel anxious every time I'm in this room? I'm like, I told you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is funny how color really does. It sets a tone. It sets a mood. I mean, you think about it. You have gray skies. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
You have sunny skies. How does that make you feel? You have blue ocean water. How does that make you feel? You have brown ocean water. How does that make you feel? Right? It's like, I went to the wrong place. So yeah, I think the color aspect, and there's a lot to it. Some of it's about how it makes you feel. And sometimes people don't know. They're like, I don't really know. I want this to look good. Or they have something they've seen in a beautiful home magazine or someone else's home, and they think, oh, this is what I want. But maybe your space, it's kind of like going to a hairdresser. Have you ever taken a picture and say, oh, I want this hairstyle? And they're like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't fit you. And you're like, but it's so beautiful. Okay, well, sometimes the color doesn't fit your space because maybe you have a small 10 by 10 little space and you absolutely love this great color that's out there right now, Salty Dog, that Sherwin-Williams has. Shout out to Sherwin-Williams. But they have this great color and it's really dark blue. It's beautiful. But you put that in a little 10 by 10 space without much lighting and windows, it's going to suck it all in. So you really do have to think about, what is your space? How big is it? What are you trying to accomplish? What other aspects in the room do you have that you're going to use after the room's painted? And is it really going to go together? Or now are you having to buy all new furniture and all, that kind of thing. So it can be important. It can play a huge role because while you as the customer get to pick the color that you want, and we're going to do what you ask us to do, at the end of the day, if it doesn't feel right or it doesn't look right, chances are you're going, the only thing that changed was they painted the walls. So that's what they're going to. So you want them to feel all the feels that they're looking for when they get that space painted. So we do try to do that, and we offer that service. It's not one that's like a guarantee. Here's how I can tell you exactly, we're not psychic or anything like that. So, but we do, there's a lot of questions to ask. What are you trying to achieve? What do you want to feel? What's the purpose of this room? Is this room to, is it an office? Is it, whatever it is? So, yeah.
Yeah. The toughest thing is, if a customer, and sometimes you have customers that are overconfident in their ability to pick a color. And really the truth is they're maybe not that great at it. And they're like me, where they saw it on a little tiny card and they thought it looked great. And then when we got it on a big wall, they went, ooh, I don't like that at all. Now, I say I don't know anything about color. I do know some things about color just from the experience of doing it. I remember this one house that the folks bought this house, and it was pretty poorly treated before they bought it, and they just needed to repaint the whole thing. And the problem was that they were wanting the dining room to be primary yellow on one wall and primary red on the other wall.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
yeah, one of the things about those two colors actually is that if anybody that's listening knows about paint colors, is the primary red and the primary yellow are both translucent colors and require not just painting them on, but you also have to use a specific primer behind it so that it builds the color in just a few coats. I don't know if you've ever seen like somebody tried to paint their front door red or something like that, and it looks atrocious. And they'll tell you, I've put 6 coats on that and it still looks like that, because that particular color of red is see-through. So you actually have to prime a gray a specific gray primer. It's kind of counterintuitive to be gray, but the correct gray primer for that red. And if you go to your paint store, any paintologist should be able to tell you the correct gray. If they can't tell you the correct gray, go to a different store. So, and it's just things like that, and in that one particular case, I could not talk them out of it. And so what I did was, instead of painting anything else, I didn't prep anything. It was one of those cases where the house was no furniture in it. They hadn't moved in yet, and they were giving us the opportunity to paint it before they moved in, which is great. So what I did was I immediately went to the paint store. I bought the correct gray, and I started painting the red. And I can't remember the primer that had to go into the yellow, but it was the correct primer for that. And, I got those 2 walls painted, and from the front door, you could see the corner where those 2 things met. And so I painted those 2 walls. It took me several hours to, get everything set up. But it took them 5 seconds to go, oh my gosh, that's the most terrible thing I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, why don't we talk about colors? And, Amy didn't consult on this one, but I had another person that was able to consult us through that. So it's tough when you get started, and I don't want customers to be in that situation because, in that particular time, this is kind of in the Wayback Machine, I was doing the painting. But now we have crews, and it's a labor expense and all that kind of stuff. So we try, with Amy, working with them and that kind of thing, we try to get them set up for success, from go.
I think nowadays it's really hard too, because you have I can only attest to, from my family personal experience, newlyweds that have these Pinterest boards.
Oh, yeah.
I want it to look like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but realistically,
Yes.
Yeah.
that's not possible, because
Yes.
that's furniture from a magazine that you don't have, or your space doesn't look like that. Your windows don't have that much natural light coming in. And so I think it's hard for people to realize, okay, this is what I'm working with in reality, and this is what my expectations are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Managing those expectations is kind of, one of the biggest deals.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think sometimes too, it's like you said, they see this with this Pinterest board, which is like it's fabulous and it's an enemy at the same time, right? Because they can make it look great, but you're like, okay, this looks like a California rancher, but honestly, I live in a Virginia colonial. Like, this is not gonna, it doesn't even flow, right?
No.
So sometimes we want a certain thing, but you gotta work with what you have. And knowing what you have is important. And sometimes you can pull things off. Today, a lot of those rules don't really exist, right? We kind of break a lot of them, but there are some of them that still do play in. So,
Like red and yellow walls connecting together, I think
Pretty
is a big
Pretty
one that we
much.
should
Pretty much,
should
yes.
keep as a big rule not to break.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is also, I think about myself when I think about my space, I'm really thinking about the colors that make me, number one, the most happy to be in, and number two, coincide with how I want to feel when I'm in my space. And so I think people don't take into consideration, it's like those Instagram reels, you see expectation versus reality.
Right.
I can hear that music playing in my head.
Yeah. We had a customer in this past year, actually. I think we had one, and she had this really huge bedroom, which was great, this master bedroom. And then they had an offset where they had a whole nother sitting area off from the bedroom. And she had these colors that she just loved. So her thought was, I could have both colors if I just do one room this and one room that, but they still kind of flow together. And I remember just trying to hold things up and say, let's think about this for a second. Because when you walk in here, this is what you're going to see. But when you turn, it's
it's almost like your mood takes a 180.
Yes.
And you're like, wait a minute, that's not how I want to feel in my space that I spend so much time in.
So it's hard because somebody will say, well, what's your favorite color? Well, somebody might ask me that and I would go, black. I love black, but I don't want black walls. That's now that is a thing right now, but I'm not looking for black walls. Okay.
People are painting their walls black.
There are people.
There are, yes.
And exterior, that's
happening.
a big thing.
Yeah,
It's black. Yeah.
I got a story. Back in the 2008 downturn, the bank ended up owning a lot of homes, and work was getting a little thin. And so I ended up with a bunch of estimates from the bank. And so there was this one house I went to, and man, it was like the worst place I'd ever been in. And I was just, what in the world is anybody going to do with this? And I went into this one room, and all the walls were painted black. And the ceiling was painted red, and they painted flames coming down into the black. And I'm not kidding you. In fact, it's happening right now as I'm talking about it. My hair just stood up. I mean, it just talk about something that communicates a feeling. I mean, if you ever, I wish I could just have that room. Like anybody that says no, colors don't matter, and I'm just step in here. I'm gonna close the door. I'll give you 5 seconds. You know?
Yeah, I think that painting your house is a big deal, not just because it is an expense. Sure. It's an investment, but you want to enjoy it. It's not something you can say like, oh, I think I'll just paint them by myself. No, I've done that. That takes a lot of time, and chances are you're going to say, I don't want to do this project anymore.
Right.
Well, yeah, and you bring up the investment part, and what that actually makes me think about is the exterior side of the equation.
Right.
Now, mostly what we've talked about here is interior. It's not that colors don't matter on the exterior, but it's a little bit different animal. One of the things that we always encourage a customer to do that's wanting to paint on the outside is, we need to find colors that you like if you're wanting to change the color, but we also need to look at the neighborhood and see what color. Everybody knows that house, the one with the pink shutters and the,
I have one in my neighborhood.
Bright green door and all that kind of stuff. And you're just, wow. So we try to help our customers not be that person, and hey, sometimes they want to be that person.
That's
and
right.
So we're there to serve.
It's kind of if your house is the house where everybody says, go to the corner with the and turn left, then you're there. You don't want to be that house.
Yeah. That's so funny.
With people who are colorblind, do you give them a little bit more instruction, or do you just kind of like let them do whatever they want?
No, we do try to give them instruction. I mean, usually they'll say that. They will usually say, I'm colorblind, or if they bring up colors that obviously, like Scott was saying, if it's stuff that you're just like, oh wait, do you really want to do red and primary yellow, like right here? You can usually find out. But you have some customers that just don't want to take your cue, and you just have to. I mean, our goal is to make the customer happy, and so we're going to give you the best advice we can give you, and we're going to steer you in the best direction that we believe is for you and what your space is. What you choose to do with it, well, I mean, that is up to you.
Yeah.
But we do try because we say it all the time. It's Scott Ellis Painting, so his name is on the sign. So his name is on the line when it comes to that. So we do. I mean, it is important because we don't want him to say, "Oh yeah, Scott Ellis painted this," and it's wow, and that's not a good wow. Like you don't want that. So we do try, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's up to the customer what they want. So.
Sure, and I can't say that we've had a lot of customers that have identified as colorblind, but one of the things that I've noticed in the ones that have is they're aware of their limitation, and they're asking, please don't let me do something that looks weird. And so they're kind of like they're making it known so that we'll help them, because that's really kind of more their main concern is what do other people think about this. But kind of rolling it back to the exteriors for a second, you talked about protecting the investment. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a spiel about that. So on the interior of a house, in my humble opinion, the level of paint quality is not as high of a concern. You really just pick the right sheen. And I'm not saying go get colored water paint. That kind of stuff is out there. But I'm talking about reasonable paints. Some of the paint manufacturers are selling crazy expensive stuff, $100+ a gallon paint. You don't need that in the interior of your house. And I guess probably my sales rep just rolled his eyes. But I'm more of a mind that on the inside, it's mainly about getting the right shininess factor for, say, a bathroom, kitchen, or walls if you have kids, that kind of thing, and the right colors. On the outside, however, this is where you do want to spend some money because it's all about protection of your house. Now, a lot of newer houses, they're made with brick or they're made with vinyl or something like that. So I'm not talking about any of those. I'm talking about the more traditional type of build where you have a hardboard siding. And there are a lot of newer homes being built with hardy. And a lot of folks feel like their hardy is a maintenance-free item, but surprise, that has to be painted. It'll take about 15 years before it starts to sun fade. But then once you're at that place, you really need to be putting on 2 coats. I have customers requesting 1 coat of paint, and it's not most paint manufacturers are making their paint to have 2 films. What they call in the business, we call them a film. You want 2 films, one laid on top of the other, and that's going to give you, depending on your conditions here in Central Virginia, 7 to 10 years of life if you're using a good quality paint. So it's not just the color that matters, but it's the quality of paint. It's the quality of the application. Every house we do, in order for us to do a warranty, and by the way, we give a 2-year warranty on all our craftsmanship, we have to be the one to clean it because we're using cleaners that are made that when we're done, they're expecting the house is going to be painted. You can't do what we do and then not paint it.
Yeah.
So, and this gets everything ready for paint, gets it super clean, and helps the paint to bond really well to the surface. So two coats, and things put on that are clean. Stuff that needs to be scraped off needs to be scraped off. Stuff that needs to be caulked. And I'll talk a little bit about caulk. A lot of painters will just, if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, you can get latex caulk and squirt it on and fill all the gaps, and it'll look great for the paint job. It takes about 1 season in our condition for caulking to, what happens in LIFO caulking is it gets dry and hard. And once it gets hard, it cannot flex. And so when it doesn't flex, it cracks. And once it cracks, water comes in, and that's the big enemy. So around your doors, around your windows, where siding meets abutments, sometimes it's a butt to itself, and other times it's to cornering trim and to windows and to doors and stuff like that. It's really important that you get the correct kind of caulk. So what we've done is we just took away the regular painter's caulk from our guys, and the only thing we allow on site is a kind of product that's called elastomeric. And elastomeric caulks, they're a bit more expensive. I think you can get a latex tube of caulk for, I don't know, $2, something like that. Elastomeric caulks will be up to like $6, $7, sometimes $8 a tube. So it's a lot more expensive, but you're getting way more longevity. So you can go back 3, 4, 5 years and push on those places that you've caulked, and they still feel spongy. You want caulk to feel spongy so that it moves when it gets cold, when it gets hot, because we kind of experience a lot of different temperature conditions here. And if you have a caulk line that breaks, water's coming in, and now you've got a bunch of other issues that can occur, like rot and that kind of thing. And down where we work in the area, I'd say most of our business is in Chesterfield County. We do work all over the RVA, but I'd say the majority of our customers are sort of in the western end of the county, Midlothian, that kind of thing. And I would say that over the period of building, of the boom of building, back in the 80s and 90s, there was a product called, it's affectionately called Masonite. It's kind of it's a siding, and it's basically made out of sawdust and resin, and then they put paper over that. And a lot, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's got to be 60 or 70% of the homes built in that time era. And that would include most of, Woodlake and Brander Mill, and some of those, areas all around in there have this kind of home if they haven't converted to vinyl yet. And, in those situations, if you have a caulk line break, if you don't paint in time, so if you're out there listening and you have this kind of siding, you need to be looking at painting about every 5 years, at least some kind of touch-ups or something like that. I personally own a Masonite home, and I've gone through the pains of, the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? So sometimes, I might wait a little long. So I'm looking at Amy to get some of the stuff done around my own house. And so we've had to, replace that stuff by the scores, and instead of just buying paint, now I'm paying for carpentry, now I'm paying for siding, now, and a lot of that stuff, because it's older, you have a hard time finding it. And so now you're into a situation where you're going to have to reside the house or cover that with vinyl siding. And I don't know how much time we have here, but I could go into a diatribe about that too. So
I actually would love, because so many people, they come in here, they always wonder why I don't really know what to say. And I think they don't really understand that customers don't have the same capacity of knowledge of your industry that you do. And so for them, being able to listen to a podcast like this, like BBB Sharing, and hear your business and what you do really gives them an eye-opening experience, because they're like, I never thought about things that way. Or I never thought about looking for, a painter or a plumber, anybody like that looks at their industry through that lens. Yeah. And I don't think that we really take the time to consider all these different aspects about it.
Right.
Yeah,
like
there's just a lot more
colors.
to it.
Yeah, there's a lot. My uncle is a carpenter.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he comes and he tells me all these stories, and he has these big projects, and he's like, they just don't understand that we can't do this.
That's right. That's right. We do. I mean, that's a lot of time. It's like, it's so funny because we will have people call us sometimes. And it's funny you say that, because they'll call us and they'll say they're DIYers, and I love DIY, but they will DIY. So I painted this room and I painted it like halfway up, but I can't get on the ladder. Can you come finish the other half?
No.
Can't
And
tell
you're
you
like,
the number of times.
Okay, but you really can't do that. And here's why, or can you just come and touch up my ceiling? Like, there's some stuff on my ceiling and I just need to touch up. Just regular ceiling paint. Can you do that? Well, when was the last time you had it painted? Oh, I don't know, 5 years ago. It could be a year ago. It doesn't even matter. The reality is, have you lit candles? Whatever. Like, it's going to be, you can't just touch that up. It's like, it's going to require a full repaint. And they don't understand that. So sometimes you're just kind of like, I don't, how do I explain this so they get it, where they don't feel like they're trying to take advantage of you, or we're trying to take advantage of you. And it's like, that's definitely not the goal. It's that at the end of the day, we want you to be happy and have what you're looking for. So if you don't want us to come and do the touch-ups, that's totally fine, because there's no such thing as us doing touch-ups on something we never did. It's going to be touch-up on what you did whenever or whoever, right? It's going to be a whole repaint. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But just know, if you do it yourself, you really need to just paint the whole thing, or you're not going to get the effect you're looking for. Yeah. And like you said, it's just that thing where there's all these little nuances that people don't know. They don't think about, oh gosh, I didn't think about it might be this, or, oh, I didn't think I needed primer under this, or whatever, Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea when we got started. So I started this business, I was 40. So I already had a career, before that. And, I've actually been in media before that. And, things kind of shifted around that time period of the 2008 thing. And I didn't know what was happening. But, when I first got in, I'm like, oh, yeah, you just go buy some paint and put it on, that kind of thing. But I had a background in sales. I had a background in people, and so we started going, oh, this actually plays here too. Let's start learning more about this. And I just started realizing, from just having a sales rep and talking to other people in the industry and that kind of thing, that it's quite sophisticated. There's just a lot of science in paint, and you can't just use any kind of paint anywhere and that kind of thing. So it's been interesting. And people don't always, they just don't understand that. Oh, leave my estimate at the door. It's just so much more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, one of the things that's really big is, for Scott and I, anything that we do business-wise or anything in life, we want it to be something where you, the person, feels like you were heard, that you were seen. Like, we get what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but we also want to get to know you. Like, we are people. And so when it comes to the relational side, it's like, it's important. That's where the customer service part comes in, and paying attention to the details and that kind of thing. And right now, it's like the world we live in is used to a screen. They're used to texting, email, like you said, just drop it off. And we're like, no, we really want to talk about this and just kind of feel it out. And like, okay, if you're not happy, maybe you still don't want to go with us, and that's totally fine. But let's talk about what's in here. And did we get something off, or did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Is something to think about? Can we take it out? Can we, that kind of thing. You really don't get that if someone's just looking at something and they're just assuming, okay, it's all about the money, or it's all about the, who's going to be the cheapest or whatever. And sometimes people just want that, and that's okay. But we really felt like, I think when we got into the painting company, one of the things we realized was the painting world really had a stigma for inebriated painters, painters coming in, high on drugs, that kind of thing, taking your money and leaving and not finishing the job. I can't tell you how many customers we talked to who would say, I paid X amount of dollars for them to do this job, and we paid this much, and they disappeared, and we never saw the painter again. Things like that, just things that you're like, wait, this shouldn't be this way. So we just saw an opportunity where it was like, okay, we can be who we are and just what we like to say, love on people, like just showing them this is the way, like this is how you do it, like this is what makes sense, that used to was in the old days, we had the old handshake was your word, like that was it. And now it's not that, but we still kind of, in some ways, that's still our philosophy. It's like, if we say we're going to be there, we're going to be there. If we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to do the best we can to communicate very clearly so that you know what it is that we're bringing to the table, and we know what you're expecting. It's like what Scott said, expecting or working with the managing the expectations, because I think we do have such a service industry crisis, in my opinion, today. Just people feeling like I'm just being used, or people just want my money, or they're, you get what you pay for. That's what you hear, and we're like, okay, well, we want to make sure that you get what you pay for and then some.
Yep.
So that there is an A+ rating at the end of the day, or a 5-star rating that's saying, hey, no question, here's where I'd go. At the end of the day, because it is painting, but I'll tell you what, if you've never painted, it's not just the color. It's not just like he says, talking about on the outside. I mean, in some places you have a homeowners association. We want to make sure that they're happy, that you have permission. You're not having to go back and repaint because there was no thought of that. So we do make sure that that's all good as well. But it's also just understanding that when you're doing it, it's hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, have you really? It's like sometimes if you really paint, it's like if you've never been in an exercise program, just start painting. I mean, just start painting. You can work out really well.
The only reason I know why and like what you guys deal with is because I am stubborn like my dad, and I had to prove a point. And when I owned my townhouse, I wanted to paint my office a certain color, and I wanted to paint my room two-tone.
Oh, nice.
So, of course, he was gone for the whole summer, and he was like, you're never going to do it. I'm going to come back, and it's going to be half painted. I'm like, watch me.
Oh, okay.
Living with my dad, I had like a downstairs area that I would just like, I would live. And I was like thinking about doing like maybe like a little light blue on like the walls. We've got some pillars, maybe red would work. Do like a dark blue for the bathroom. He's like, okay, do it. I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, let's try it. And then... yeah, it's a lot more into it.
Oh,
It's a lot.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard a customer say that, because we get those calls, where they started it and they realize this is not going to be okay, or I'm not going to finish it until, 2045.
Yeah, they fed the gremlin after midnight and gave it water.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, we do find that a lot of our customers are the ones who have experienced painting. They either... say, oh, it's just too much, or they, it's like, I just don't have time. I know it takes time, I just don't have time. But a lot of times we find some of our best customers are the ones who are a little bit older that go, I've been there, I've done that, I am not doing that again. I don't pay anybody else to do it, because they're going, okay, I get it. So it is a lot of work, and sometimes it's one of those things that I think it doesn't get well respected. It's like the person that might come clean your house or clean your office, or you don't think about what it really takes to do that. And so, but it's important.
So we feel like we've been successful, if we take that pain away from them and give them a turnkey situation. A lot of times we come in, to start the paint job, we'll take pictures because we're going to move your furniture and we're going to take your pictures off and stuff like that. And so we want to see the pictures so we can get it back, kind of thing. But I did I want, if it's okay, I'd like to go back and visit about the relationship stuff Amy was talking about, because we're actually a little bit fanatical about that. If it's possible to be in a good relationship with our customers, we try to do that. We're both real relational people, and if we can, we want to be friends. And we have customers that just love us and that kind of thing. But you also have different personalities. So you'll have customers that are just more business toned and just get your job done, get out. And we try to discern that and do that kind of thing. But, we're always working to try to do that. And I wanted to take this opportunity too to say, while it's true, my name's on the line because my name's on the sign. Right. We say that a lot. Sometimes things don't go perfect.
That's right.
And what I usually tell folks is, look, we're not always perfect, but we're always going to try to make it perfect. And so we're here for the long haul. And I've got one story about that. I don't remember the year, if anybody's been in Richmond a long time and they pay attention to the weather, there was this year, and I think it was back in, I don't know, it was 09 or 10, something like that, where around Thanksgiving, which is late in the year to be doing an exterior, we had a storm blow through, and it lasted about 3 days, and it rained sideways for 3 days, and it was unforecast. So it wasn't like anybody knew it was,
it's just out of nowhere.
Yeah,
right.
It was like, went from a 20% chance to like this torrential thing that happened. And I was painting a house that was old down in Petersburg, and it had a metal siding, which metal siding, the paint takes a lot longer to dry because it's not going to soak in at all. It's only going to dry from the outside. Temperatures were a little bit low, humidity was probably a little bit high and that kind of thing. But we thought we were in good shape, and we got this whole house done. I sprayed it, we did everything, got it locked down, and it was an investment property and a guy that I had done a lot of work for down there. The minute the truck was loaded and I put it in drive, the first couple of drops of rain hit the rain shield, and I said a prayer. I was like, Lord, don't let this, because this paint needs several hours to dry. And by the time, I don't know if it was that night or time I got home or whatever, it was really raining. And like the next day it rained all day long. And like the next day after that, it rained all day long. And so on the next day when it dried up a little bit, I very, humbly and cautiously called, the investor, and I said, hey. He goes, hey, how you doing? And I was like, so how's that house looking? And he just said, you may need to get over it. And so on the side that the wind was blowing, I guess the windward side of the storm where all the rain was, 100% of the paint was gone.
Really?
Wow. And that was actually the good part of it. The bad part was the leeward side, because the rain went over the roof and then dripped down and made carvings into the paint, and the paint dried like that.
No.
And that side of the house was the high vis side.
Of course.
And, it's because the guy was going to be selling the house, and you pull up into the driveway and it's just there, and your windscreen is big as Texas. And so he just, he looked at me and said, I'm going to need that taken care of. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to take care of it. So I'd never had a situation like that at this point. I guess I'd only been in the business about 3 years or 4 years or so. And, so I guess the obvious thing was to get up there and try to sand, but the problem is it's metal siding, so you really can't sand much. So we did that, and then we also scraped, and then I realized, okay, ladders are too slow. I got scaffolding. We set scaffolding up, put the guys in there. And I think we worked on this thing for 2 weeks. Sherwin-Williams started giving me product out of the Petersburg store. They had some high build primers and things like that we were trying to use, and we weren't getting any love out of that, because when you put paint on something that's got a bad shape to it, it just chases the shape. I mean, that's just the end. So I was learning a lot, as I was doing this. And then the store manager, I think his name was Greg at the time, he said, hey, why don't you try some exterior spackle? And I was like, what in the world is exterior spackle? And he gives me this can of stuff, and it's like an oil-based spackling that you can literally put on like drywall mud and sand it down. And so the other part of this story I didn't tell is I ran out of money. So it was me, myself, and I at this point. I had spent all the money paying guys, and I just didn't have any more money to pay guys. So it's just me. And I got over there, and it took me, 3-4 days, but I got everything spackled and sanded smooth. So we like filled in all those valleys and sanded that down, and then I sprayed it. And at the end of my day spraying, it was late, and so I just had to pack up and go home. Everything was still wet, and I really can't scrutinize it till it dried. Then the next day, I pulled up, and the guy was there in the driveway, and we were just talking stuff. I didn't even look up, I was afraid to look up, and I looked up, and it was perfect. And I hate to say this as a tough contractor guy, but I literally started to cry.
Right.
We do at that point.
Right.
In front of this guy. I'm just crying. And he says, "It's going to be okay, Scott." I said, "I know, that looks great." The nightmare is over.
Yeah.
Finally.
pulled
Oh
off.
my goodness.
It worked out.
Yeah. So when I say we're fanatical about it, I mean it. We're not leaving. I guess we could get kicked out, but if you don't kick us out, we're staying until we get to some, whatever the level is where it's as good as it can be, and hopefully that means you're happy. So that's kind of us.
And that leads me to, how can people get in contact with you guys?
Okay, so my favorite way is to go to scottellispainting.com and request an estimate, because that hits our email, which hits a thing called Zapier, which puts it on Slack, and
It puts it all in the system.
notifications and whistles and bells go off everywhere, and so you're going to get a call back really fast. My second favorite way would just be to call, and our main line actually rings my cell phone, and that's 804-715-1837. And so those are kind of the two primary ways that we like to hear from you.
Wonderful. Amy and Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It was wonderful. I didn't have to pull any teeth to get you guys to tell me any stories, which was amazing. Made my job easier today, and I had a wonderful time talking to you. I met you briefly before, but now I really got to know you guys, and I had a great time. Josh, thank you for joining us as well.
Of course. It's good to be here. It's good to see you guys.
you.
Everyone that is listening, please make sure to follow us on BBB Sharing Central VA. BBB Sharing Spotify, and then, of course, BBB Central VA on YouTube, so that you can watch and listen to the podcast there as well. And please do not forget to follow and subscribe. Thank you.